This is Kzsc News. I'm Adelaide Carlson. Today, we have two stories. The University of California will not require standardized test scores from its applicants in the coming school year. Our story will talk about the implications of that recent decision by the UC Regents. But first, Katya Damian of Kzsc News has a story about voting by mail in the November 3rd election. Santa Cruz County and the rest of the state will lean more heavily on voting by mail.
Due to coronavirus, Governor Gavin Newsom signed an executive order to ensure that Californians can vote safely during the general election in November. The order requires sending vote-by-mail ballots to all registered voters. However, Californians will still be able to access in-person voting. Dora Rose with the League of Women Voters of California says it's important to keep polling places open in addition to expanding voting by mail.
Those in-person locations are really essential, especially for voters with disabilities or who have limited English proficiency and who need the assistance in in-person voting, for people who won't receive their mail ballots because they're unhoused or now because they're displaced because of the pandemic.
Some concerns have been raised about potential voter fraud with mail ballots. Rose points out that mail-in ballots go through security checks.
Every voter has to sign the outside of their vote-by-mail ballot envelope. That goes through a verification process. And when a vote-by-mail ballot is received, it's logged into the statewide system. So you can check to see if somebody has already submitted a vote-by-mail ballot.
In Santa Cruz County, about 7 in 10 registered voters already receive ballots by mail. This time, ballots are expected to be mailed to all registered voters. It starts October 5th. There are also other changes in the county. There will be more voter service centers this time, 17 centers compared with 10 in the March primary. The centers help people register to vote, get replacement ballots, and provide other services. There will also be more drop-off boxes for ballots this time. Gail Pellerin, Santa Cruz County's Registrar of Voters, said the county also might expand secure email voting. Pellerin spoke about it at a recent Board of Supervisors meeting.
We also have a remote accessible vote-by-mail balloting system that's designed for military and overseas voters, as well as voters with disabilities who can vote from the safety of their own home through a ballot that gets emailed to them. And we're looking at expanding that to allow any voter to utilize that as a service to be able to get their ballot.
Pellerin said she's planning a public education campaign to make sure voters know their options.
And we'll continue our voter outreach as much as we can. We'll be going into our convalescent facilities. We'll be working with our jail facilities, making sure that all voters do have access to voting. So we're full steam ahead. We're excited about this election. We believe it can be conducted in a very safe, secure manner and that will give us the same integrity that we've always had and experienced here in Santa Cruz County.
To check if you're registered to vote or to find more information on voting in Santa Cruz County, go to votescount.com. That's VOTESCOUNT.com. I'm Katya Damian for Kzsc News. California News Service contributed to this report.
Leaders from the University of California recently decided to suspend the requirement for standardized test scores for applicants to the university. It's a pilot program that starts this fall and ends in 2024. By that time, the UC system might have its own standardized test to replace it. The SAT, also known as the Scholastic Aptitude Test, plays a role in the decision process to admit students into UC schools, but it's not without problems. In late May, at a UC Board of Regents meeting, the Regents unanimously voted to waive the SAT and ACT requirements for university applicants. UC President Janet Napolitano explains why.
I was unpersuaded that the value add of the SAT and ACT to our admissions process was sufficient to outweigh all of the extensive mitigation measures we employ to counteract the effect of the standardized tests on certain populations, specifically to counteract the correlation between the SAT and ACT to the socioeconomic level of the student, and in some cases, the ethnicity of the student. I also believe, however, that we should not just say, you know what, we're going to shut down the SAT right now. We're not ready for that.
Napolitano said a new test could be in the works.
The modification I'm recommending is, importantly, that we create a bridge from the tests we currently use and how we use them to either a new test that can help our admissions officers better assess student preparation, or if a new test is not feasible or available, that we, by 2025, cease any use of the SAT or ACT altogether.
One original reason to have the test is that it's maybe the only uniform measure to gauge students from across the country. But the decision to not require test scores came after 2 years of research on the value of standardized tests in the admissions process. In 2018, in response to complaints, Napolitano sent a letter to student leaders that questioned the value of standardized tests and whether a new test should be used. In 2019, a UC standardized testing task force was formed. Eddie Cuomo was the co-chair of the task force. He's a professor at UC Riverside.
Task force members acknowledged a number of concerns about standardized tests in K-12 schooling. For one, standardized tests tend to be associated with one's level of privilege and wealth, at times inherited at birth. SATs in particular have encountered fierce criticisms for favoring the wealthy since the 1940s. There have been persistent correlation between test scores and both socioeconomic status and race. Put another way, there are advantages for students who take the test from affluent families.
Student leaders, minority rights group leaders, and others talked about the cost of test preparation. Courses through Kaplan or the Princeton Review can cost $600 to $1,300. Those course fees are out of reach for many low-income families. Here's Cecilia Kasher. She's the education director for the Dolores Huerta Foundation in Bakersfield.
These tests create a backdoor for wealthy white students to gain access to the UC. The students who represent the diversity and potential of our state cannot afford expensive tutors, and they do not have access to extra time. We really urge you to make history today to support anti-racist admission. Here's
Nicola Foster. She's a UCLA senior.
In my community, low-income Black students are forced to take a racist exam, and that disproportionately blocks them from attaining higher education compared to students from affluent backgrounds. What does it say when Black and brown students are forced to drop out of high school and told that they are not good enough for UCLA? That only a handful can make it while everyone else falls into the school-to-prison pipeline.
The College Board, which makes the SAT, has said that American society and American schools are unequal. Gaps in test scores reflect those inequities. Standardized testing will remain optional for applying students through 2022. After 2022, students may still take the tests and submit scores, but the scores will not be taken into consideration when determining if they will be admitted to a UC school. I'm Adelaide Carlson. This is Kzsc News. Kzsc News is produced by Stephen Baxter, Keith Rosendahl, Melanie Katz, and Katya Damian. To listen to this report on demand, or for archived Kzsc News broadcasts, visit kzsc.org/podcasts.